G'day mates, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to be recapping all the action from FNCS Day 1, and we have some huge storylines. We have some big teams popping off massively. Benjyfishy's team coming in top 3 after having a game crash game 1. We also have some big teams on NAE showing up at the top. Reverse 2K, Deyy and Mero, our ex-champs, potentially going to be the first team to ever go back-to-back in 2 FNCSs in a row. Also though, we need to talk about a few upsets. We have huge teams on every region just really not showing up. Tayson's team on EU, Jynx's team on OCE. We have Clix, Bugha, Bizzle almost making a comeback at the end of day 1 on NA East, but still behind the pace. So there's so much to cover. Kicking things off with NA East, we had a ridiculous set of 6 matches, and we have Deyy, Mero, and Reverse in first place. Like I said, potentially going to go back-to-back FNCS champions on 165 points. And even today, they already did something they weren't able to do last time they won FNCS. They got a victory royale. Notably, last FNCS, all 12 games, despite them playing insanely consistently, they never picked up a win, but they were able to break that here today. We also have Slacks, Jahq, and Acorn close behind on 147 points in second place, also a victory royale. Degen, Ajers, and Skqttles third place, 141 with a victory royale. The highest placed team with no victory so far, Khanada, Bucky, and Macwood, they came second place in one of their games, so really close. Fifth place, Commandment, Sent, and Edgy on 127 with again another victory royale. And then Creo, Illest, Avery in sixth place on 124. You can run the entire leaderboard. I don't want to just kind of read it out for you. I want to break down some of the big games, some of the big moments, and talk about some of these teams and how they're performing, why they're doing so well, or in the case of teams like Clix, Bugha, and Bizzle, why they're not right now. Starting off with the teams doing well, Deyy, Mero, and Reverse right now, uncontested Dirty Docs is working fantastically for them right now. They have an average placement of 9, but they have average elims of 7.5, showing their ridiculous aggression. And if you look at their match history, it's actually very close to being even more of a blowout as well. Their first game, they got a 5 elim 15. Things weren't looking too fantastic, but the 12 elim first place in game 2 really shot them up. And then they got an 8 elim 8th. You've got to remember, 8th place, if they survive 5 more teams, which is like 30 seconds or less, that's when you jump into that big top 3 6 points as well. They got a 6th place, so even closer. Then they just scraped through with a 3rd place, and unfortunately the last game of the day was their worst game. They got a 2 elim 21st. They took a really weird aggressive fight on the edge of it was like risky reels area that dragged out for so long. They ended up losing, I believe. Deyy, Mero, and Reverse went on as a duo. They went down early into the end game, but at the same time, fantastic performance. Right now, they are absolutely dominating. All the drama with Deyy, it's so good to see him show up today and just absolutely dominate. Clearly, all the drama is behind him. He was playing phenomenal Fortnite. Slacks, Jahq, and Acorn, the most underrated trio in NA East, or potentially the world. I'm just going to say it. If you follow competitive Fortnite, you know they're good, but honestly, they're not in this conversation enough. They're in second place on 147 points right now. They have the second biggest game of the day. They got a 15 elimination first in their 3rd game. That was when they managed to get their hands on the RPG. We didn't get to see on the official broadcast exactly how they got their hands on that RPG, but because Zayts has been contested by Predator, I'll talk about that in a little bit. I think maybe they managed to bully their way over and get that from them at the Hydro Dam, but they're playing really consistently. Again, they have a 4th place on the board as well, a 12 elimination 4th place, 1 more place, and that's 6 extra points. They got an 8th place. They only had 1 game where they went down really early with a 0 elim 22nd. Other than that, out of Slurpy Swamps right now, Jahq, Slacks, and Acorn are looking insanely strong. Degen, Ajers, and Skqttles was way down on the leaderboard until the very end. I think they were in 9th place going into the final game, and they picked up the biggest game of the day on NA East, a 16 elim victory royale. Absolutely popped off and dominated. Again, they have 2 5th places as well. So right now, another team that could be even higher up on the leaderboard if they found that little bit extra consistency. I love their drop spot coming out of Orchard and coming out of the triple houses over near Steamy. I don't see they're going to be heavily contested tomorrow. I can't see anyone really trying to steal their loot or affecting their gameplay a lot. They are playing fantastic. Also, worth mentioning, the zones today on NA East were pretty even for most teams. The first 2 games went almost identical southwest, and then 2 of the games, or at least 3, have gone more north today. But again, most of the west side of the map, even those northern zones, one was straight north, but one was very much northwest above Sweaty Sand. So I guess you could argue maybe the west side of the map's been kind of getting a bit more of a benefit. But so far today, we've really seen teams have to show that they they can rotate every kind of zone, because we've had a pretty even split of north or south with a bit of west favoring, but I'm looking forward to seeing them pop off. They were my pick in the heats. I think they're clinically underrated. If it wasn't for that big last game though, they would be really down there on the leaderboard, but you can't count that out. A 16 elimination win is not easy. Now we got Bucky, Khanada, Macwood in 4th place and Commandment Sense and Edgy in 4th and 5th. They're both performing really, really well. Commandment Sense and Edgy got contested game number 1, which really kind of threw their tournament into a slow start. They still did well in that first game. They got a 7-elim 4th. Their second game, though, unfortunately, was a 0-elim 30th, going down early. I don't know what happened there. Same as their 6th game today. They got a 0-elim 28th because they got hard aggroed by Zayts, Saf, and Stretch, who I think were maybe playing a little bit emotional. Zayts, Saf, and Stretch took a super early game fight on almost no tags. They ended up wiping them out, which was super unfortunate to watch. If you discount those 2 games though, they are doing phenomenal. They are either going down on spawn or making deep endgame. 7-elim 4th, a 9-elim win, 6-elim 3rd, and a 4-elim 7th. So from the 4 games where they've made it out of the early game, they have insane consistency. So I very much expect them to continue that into tomorrow and get a top 3 or potentially a win. They are going in about 30 points down on the first place team though. That's an entire victory royale, so a little bit scary for them. Bucky, Khanada, Macwood, I did expect to do a little bit better today. They weren't contested. Nothing really changed up their game plan very much. I know the first 2 games they got really fast south zones. As soon as they started to get northern zones, they got a 5-elim 5th and a 7-elim 2nd, so really showing up in those games. They really came back in the tail half. A few teams had big jump ups at the end, and this was one of them. They got a 5-elim 5th, 7-elim 2nd, 8-elim 4th, and 5-elim 3rd. So you've got to imagine if they can take that same momentum into tomorrow, their points are going to soar as well, because it was only their first 2 games that really let them down. Creo, Illis, and Avery are just playing consistent, solid Fortnite. Don't really have much to talk about them as well, and I want to start talking about some of the teams that are underperforming massively, which we didn't really expect coming into this. Clix, Bugha, and Bizzle, I don't want to say they're underperforming massively. They're in 8th place right now, but it came off the back of a huge 8 elimination victory royale in their second last game. They are the team that is the lowest on the leaderboard for having a victory royale under their belt. It was almost a game number 6 as well, where they picked up another victory royale. They were on high ground. Unfortunately, they got into a clash with XMB, Ved, and Leo. That cost them a lot, and they went down with a 5-elim 15th. But I also want to point out their first game of the day, we watched them go down to Storm Surge. They were the team that died just outside top 70 players, getting 0 placement points, going down 27th team. I got a little bit worried. I thought, okay, what's this team gonna do? Next game, they turned up the pace. They came back with over 1,000 above Storm Surge when we saw them. So they fixed that up. But if you look at their placement, it's consistent, but it's consistently middle of the pack. It's a 27th place, which, you know, we discount, but 12th place, 13th place, a win, and then 15th place. So we're seeing them go down around, when you look at, you know, 12th or 15th place, it doesn't sound that impressive, but that's 22 minutes alive. When you think about a game being 25 minutes long, that's rotating zones. They're going down at the start, usually around 1st into 2nd rotating zone. If they can piece a few more things together, they will have a huge jump up on the leaderboard. In 8th place right now, when they're about 70 points behind 1st, they're gonna need a phenomenal day 2 to have any chance of winning. But honestly, I think a top 3 or a top 5 would be a fantastic performance for this team, especially when, as I've talked about, Clix has always kind of struggled a bit in the finals. Bugha hasn't so much, Bizzle not so much recently, but they need to have a big performance to kind of break that curse for Clix. Jumping right down to the bottom where I didn't expect I'd be doing this, Zayt, Saf, and Stretch in 24th place on 37 points. They came out of the reboot round, so I know it's kind of weird to be pointing them out, but you guys know Zayt, Saf, and Stretch were potential favorites. At the start of the season, I had them pegged as favorites to win this FNCS. I did not expect to see them in 24th place, even though it did come down to the reboot round. They've been dropping Hydro Dam. Game 1, they had it uncontested, and they only got a 1 elimination 8th place, which wasn't too fantastic for them. But after that, they started getting contested by Predator's team, and that is where everything went even worse. They have a 0-elim 19th, 1-elim 32nd, 2-elim 23rd, a 0-elim 33rd, and then a 6-elim 11th place. Their last game being that game where I talked about them hard aggroing centered edgy commandment ended up being their best game of the day. So I mean, I know Zayt's taken to Twitter to complain about getting 50-50'd. He said this is why he hates competitive Fortnite, and don't get me wrong, I think their performance would be way better if they weren't getting 50-50'd, but it's just the position they put themselves in. When they left Sweaty, they left Dirty, and they went Hydro Dam. It is just the worst drop to be 50-50'd on because it ruins everything. It's just this giant 50-50 for Hydro Dam. Whoever gets a gun scrambles and tries to win the fight. There's not a lot of skill in that fight, and even when they are walking away after being contested, it looks like the games really aren't going in their favor anyway. So unfortunate to see, and that's a similar story as we have again even lower on the leaderboard. Chap, Dukes, and Threats right now in 31st place on 14 points. Again, Chap has also taken to Twitter to talk about how he just hates the way the meta comes down to if you're contested, you do poorly. If you're uncontested, you do well. And I really do feel for Chap in this regard because at Steamy, they're doing their best, but they're really just getting outplayed right now by Bully, Frist, and Os. But I know what you're thinking, right? You always say that, like, oh, if you're contested, just win if you're so good. But I mean, even if you look at Bully's team, who I think won 5 of the 6 spawn fights today, they're only in 11th place because once you have that fight, once you use all your resources and meds into the fight, even if you win it, you still end up not doing very well into the end games because you're so shambles from that original fight. So it does feel like a coin flip right now. If you're contested, you're not doing well. We're not really watching a single team on any region that's being contested still showing up and doing well. The best I would say right now on NA East is Gabe Tahi and Sprite. They're contested at Caddy Corners. They pulled off a 9 elimination Victor Royale and a 10 elimination second, the 2 games they made it off spawn. But come on, you can't expect the team to get top 2 finishes every single time they make it out of spawn. It's just not realistic. You do have to understand that when teams are contested, their chance of winning goes down massively no matter how good they are. And I think it's a conversation we need to have going into future FNCSs with how the map works, making sure there's enough loot for every team so this doesn't happen because it's unfortunate to see. NA East overall has been fantastic games. It's super exciting going into tomorrow because we have such a close leaderboard, and unless Deyy, Mero, and Reverse win game 1 or 2 or really jump away with it, I could see this going to any of the teams in top 5. There is a lot of pressure on Deyy, Mero, and Reverse right now to hold on to the lead, but imagine not just back-to-back FNCSs. Obviously, Tayson's done that. It is phenomenal. Kind of cemented himself as arguably the best player in the world, and you really can't have any argument that he's not at least top 3, but to see a team, the same team, win back-to-back FNCSs of the same game mode would be ridiculous. I'm so excited to see if that potentially happens or if something goes wrong and they fall off the pace. Speaking of Tayson, it's a perfect transition into EU, and that's a name that we're not really seeing on the leaderboard right now. I'll talk about that in a minute, but right now we have to look about at the leaderboard. We have Kami, Setty, and Teeq in first on 147 points. They got that 1 victory royale. We have Amplify, Matzo, and Benji in second on 143 again with a victory royale. Hen, Janice, and Chapix on 137 with a victory royale. And then we have Flick, Anas, and Thomas HD, our highest placed team with no victory royale. Vadeal, Noahreyli, and Rezon on 115. And then we go down from there again. There's a lot to cover, but I want to talk about the top teams and then talk about some of the teams that are underperforming, same as NA East. I talked about it in my video yesterday. Kami, Setty, and Teeq, they got the Kami split on lockdown. We know that any team is going to be able to put things together with this ridiculous drop spot. It's going to be them. But at the same time, you can't just kind of put it all down to loot. Right now, they've been playing insane Fortnite, and they deserve that top spot. If you look at their run of games at the end of today, let's go through it. So 1 elimination 11, starting off a bit slow. A 0 elimination 24th. That was a bit of a rough one. But from here down, things look fantastic. They finished the day so strong. 6 elim 9th, a 6 elim 3rd, an 8 elim 2nd, and a 7 elim win. That is fantastic. And like I talked about, top 3 is where that insane consistency is. Half the placement points total are given out for top 3. If you come 4th, 5th, 6th, anywhere around there, you've just missed out on so many points. So them getting a 9th or top 3 is really, really good for their consistency going forward. But as I say that though, all it would have taken was to go down 1 or 2 teams early in a couple of those games, and they would have been bumped out of their first place slot. Second place with BenjyFishy. Before I break down how BenjyFishy, Amplify, and Matzo's tournament have gone, let me just roll a clip of how BenjyFishy's game 1 went.
I hate this game. I hate this game, man. I hate it.
Ja.
Had je het fully opgeboxt.
Oh my god.
Niemand die beweegt ook. Eindig fully gekikt. Hopelijk hoort niemand dat.
Actually, I just
Moeten weg.
I'm so quiet. Hold on.
Denk je?
Ja, we moeten even daar boven blijven waar jij bent. Ik ga naar jouw spot.
Oh,
We moeten damage pakken.
I hate
Ga
this.
veel mensen denk dat we hier gewoon blijven in een kutpositie.
When that's the way your tournament starts, for a lot of players, they really would have lost their composure. They would have started to panic. They would have got tilted. I know it's one game of 12, but if that's how your FNCS starts, you hear how upset Benji is, that usually would spell disaster. But we know how insane Amplify and Matzo are, why they're a duo with so much chemistry, and why BenjyFishy wanted to play with them. They went on to clutch up a 6 elimination 5th place, and that is such a good mental reset. Okay, I crashed. That's upsetting, but we still put up massive points. And then game number 2, with that mental reset, they go on to get an 11 elimination 1st place, which is just such a massive way to kick off. Everyone was freaking out. It was such a dominant victory royale as well. The way they did it was insane. Everyone took to Twitter to freak out about it. The pace kind of slowed down a little bit though. They got a 2 elim 15th, a 2 elim 14th, a 9 elim 3rd though. They picked it up in the second last game, and in the last game they were set up for success and they went down a little bit early though. A 3 elim 11th place. One thing I do want to point out about EU, I talked about how NA had a pretty even split of zones. You had a pretty even between north and south with a bit of west favoring. Yeah, EU was very south favored. Pretty much all the players were saying the same thing. 5 of the games went straight south, only 1 of the games going north. So for a team that drops at Slurpy Swamps uncontested, it really did play into BenjyFishy's team's favor, and that's something I want you to keep in mind when you're looking at other teams like Chaps, who still had an insane day, having to rotate all the way from Craggy to these southern zones. So maybe tomorrow in the 6 games we see, if we get more of a north bias and a north focus, I think the leaderboard could change up. Speaking of Chaps team, they are in the 3rd place. They got that 1 victory out. Their match history looking insanely solid. When I talk about that top 3, they did have 2 games where they went down 6th place. So a 7 elim 3rd, a 7 elim 6th, a 3 elim 6th, a 2 elim 18th, unfortunately, but then an 11 elim win and a 0 elim 15th. Now, this is a team that, again, I had as my pick to win it, up there with Flick, Anas, and Thomas HD. But again, when you look at these zones, all being far, far south zones, and they're a Craggy team that already has really rough storm surge out of Craggy. It's the biggest issue with that drop spot. If you then have to instantly book it all the way south, everyone's hard rotating ahead of you, it's really hard to get your storm surge, and that's usually going to lead teams to ridiculous inconsistency. So seeing them in 3rd place, they really can't get any worse zones tomorrow. I'm not kidding. Unless they get 6 out of 6 south, which would mean 11 of 12 games are hard south, things can only improve for this team. So I'm really looking forward to them just jumping up and having that big leap on the leaderboard. Again, talking about Anas's team as well, they came in at 4th place, behind them by a decent margin, 16 points. They're on 121. They're the highest placed team on EU that don't have a victory royale. They had some good games, but overall lacking a bit of consistency on the placement, but getting really consistent eliminations. They got a 6 elim 7th, an 8 elim 10th, a 7 elim 3rd, then a 0 elim 27th, so only 1 throwaway game, a 6 elim 6th, and then a 7 elim 16th. So they're really putting up frags. If they're getting 7 elims and coming 16th, they are getting the big eliminations. That's what's carrying them right now. So they have the highest average elims of any team in EU right now. So despite their placement being behind the mark, they have a chance, and they don't have that big victory royale point to jump them up. Their highest being that 3rd place. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do tomorrow as well. Again, with South zones, you could argue Dirty Docks isn't the best, but at the same time, it's middle map. They're going to be more focusing on getting some kind of east focus rather than the west side. But honestly, while I'm talking about these 2 teams, I have to think usually we have Thomas HD as the best sniper in EU, arguably the best sniper in the world, but this title was honestly taken by Hen today. Hen got some of the most ridiculous snipes I've ever seen. I just want to show you the 2 clips.
Opening. Team in zone east, bro. Team in zone east.
Yeah. Okay.
Nice. Nice. Go. Come. Go. You're up. You just gotta spray their walls, okay?
Fighting.
20 cracked. 30 white, 6
Get sniped! Oh my god!
Nice, then.
Oh my god!
Right now, when it comes down to rotating that late and getting your storm surge, those kind of snipes are so massive, not just for the points, but for the damage they allow as well. And then we had a team that was interesting to see. One of their games, I actually saw them go down to storm surge, Vadeal, Noahreyli, and Rezon, the team that I talked about as being arguably the best fighters in the world. But I said coming into set lobbies, coming into the finals day, do I think they could show up big? They've surprised me. They came top 5. I'm not surprised because of the quality of how good they are as players, but you always have a tendency to tell this story of they're good fighters, but they're not that smart. But honestly, proving me wrong here and so many other people, they got one victory royale. They're on 115 points, but they had a different issue. They are too good. They are too scary and too good of fighters that it actually took one of them tweeting out to try to get a team to drop near them because no one wants to go anywhere near them, and that's why they're struggling for Surge, because they have built up that much of a reputation on EU, the most aggressive region, that no one wants to step anywhere near them. But their one victory royale was insane. 14 eliminations, just absolutely insane. They got a 7 elim 10th, a 2 elim 30th, a 5 elim 8th, a 0 elim 22nd, and a 3 elim 13th. So a little bit shaky on the consistency. If it wasn't for that massive victory royale, they really wouldn't be this high up. But a 14 elim win, again, isn't easy. And maybe if a team takes the bait, or if a team does want to go to that split just near Sweaty Sands on the Fort Crumpet kind of, you know, area, because again, that's the drop the Reverse 2K's team went last season for NA East, and they managed to win FNCS. So it's got enough loot there. It just shows that this team is so scary, people don't want to step near them. We've got a few big name teams on EU not showing up. Andalix's team in 9th place on 88 points. And then we have Idrop, Tayson, and Savage in 10th place on 86 points. So things are looking really, really sketchy here to see if Tayson can be the first person in a major region. I know Jynx has done it on OCE, but as someone from OCE, you've got to argue it's going to be more impressive if Tayson can do it on EU to pick up 3 FNCS titles back to back to back. But right now in 10th place, unless they have one of the most dominant day 2s you could ever imagine, you have to think first place is going to be impossible. If you're asking what happened here, like why are they at this point, I mean, I want to argue a bit of bad luck. Tayson was tweeting out things like the RPG is so broken, died to fall damage on a bouncer. Hopefully we get zones tomorrow, because again, I talked about how a lot of them were fast south pools, but at Salty Towers, I feel like the zone argument isn't as strong. You are pretty much as center map as you can go, so any zone could never be truly terrible for you. If you've got a team that's doing well out of Craggy coming 3rd place and you drop Salty, they really have more room to complain about south zones. A lot of them did go more east focused as well though, so they did have to rotate to the southeast, but it's unfortunate to see from a team that's been so insanely dominant and has 3 of the smartest players, and I'd imagine the 3 best players suited to kind of step up when it's a final stage, compared to the Heats where they still came 1st place. So I don't really know if things are going to be able to bring together for this team. They've left it really late. It's going to take a astronomical day 2 to really even secure a top 3. They're currently almost half the points of 1st place. The last EU team I want to talk about was my kind of wild card pick to do well. You had Stompys team with their uncontested Hydro Dam picking up the 10 elimination victory out to kick the day off, and then a 2 elim 2nd place. So things were looking fantastic. They were in the lead. They had 1st place on the leaderboard, but things crumbled, unfortunately. A 4 elim 14th, a 0 elim 24th, a 0 elim 16th, and a 2 elim 9th to finish off the day saw them in only 8th place. Still decent, but they started strong and fizzled out. If they can start strong again tomorrow, they have a chance at it. I'll be doing a recap of NA West tomorrow, but I've just got done with 2 back-to-back regions, OCE and NA East. It's been a long day for me. I'm recording this currently late at night. I got to do NA East tomorrow morning, but I have to recap OCE, my home region, because man, what a finish. We ended up having Muzz, Looter, and Speedy taking out 1st place on 325 points. 1 victory royale, which was interesting, as Volks, Sorif, and Sync came in 2nd on 295 with 3 victory royales. It came right down to the very last game. Both teams were alive going into the end game, and usually with OC FNCS, as I tell the story of a team getting griefed, someone in last place dropping on the top team, that didn't happen. And if you remember, I did my interview recently with Muzz. I called him out as one of the most underrated players in the world, popping off on the biggest stage. As part of that, I told the story like when Muzz during solo FNCS going into his final game in 1st place got griefed. He broke down in tears on stream. He was so upset that he didn't manage to win it. He's always had parents that haven't been as kind of, you know, supportive of his gaming career, and he managed to show up big, taking out the 1st place. OC's prize pool, as we know, has been cut back a little bit. It was 7,500 each, but at the same time, I still know how much this meant. Muzz was live. He was pulling thousands of viewers, getting the recognition he deserves, and Looter and Speedy can't be discounted. They all played so phenomenal. Speedy said he was considering retiring after this FNCS, but with such a big performance, he's going to stick around. Now, I don't like to ever take away anyone's victory. I don't ever like to dampen it, but it does have to be mentioned that I got one of my mods to make this photo because I was on the official broadcast. This is what the 6 zones looked like. What is that? That is ridiculous. Every single zone going far south. So our second place team, Sync, Sorov, and Volks dropping out of steamy stacks. This was brutal. It was so unfortunate to see them just play what Zorov on Twitter coined running simulator, and it was. They couldn't find their surge. Almost every game today they had issues. It was due to surge because they just had to book it all the way south. Obviously, Muzzlooter and Speedy dropping Lazy Lake. They had a far better time of things. They still played phenomenal. Don't want to take it away from them, but I have to shout out how consistent Sorov, Volks, and Sync played despite those ridiculous zones. Also, I know because he's a fan favorite, Fresh Rel and Nubatoon, I discounted them. I said I'd be surprised to see them make the Victory Royale. I said there's potential for top 5, but I'm going to admit it, I wasn't incredibly hopeful. Their heats, their scrims, their everything, they were looking good. They were looking like a solid top 10 team, but I didn't know if they could jump into top 5, and they did just that. They managed to beat out the FNCS reigning champs, Jynx, Alec, and Worthy, who unfortunately they didn't show up yesterday. They showed up big today. They had a big comeback on day 2, but it wasn't enough after a really poor day 1. But Fresh Rel and Nubatoon, again, kind of bringing things back here. They got a 6 elim second place in the second last game of the entire thing to really jump them up on the leaderboard. And we still see Fresh, despite, you know, calling himself a content creator, swapping to content seasons ago, still finding himself inside top 5. And I think it's due to the amount of preparation and time they put in this season. Fresh really did hit the scrims. He'd been practicing, and again, I'm surprised to see it after their performance in heats and qualifiers. But when the pressure's on, we know that Fresh doesn't crack. Nubatoon stepped up, the young fragger, and they secured a 5th place. Either way, that does it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it was much longer, but I wanted to break everything down. When I drop these videos, EU FNCS is usually just going on or about to start, so hope you guys swing back by and watch this. I know it's interesting to see my thoughts after it happens as well, so if you liked today's video, please chuck a like on it. Let me know in the comment section down below any of your thoughts from FNCS this weekend. It's been such an exciting one, and I'm going to upload another video tomorrow detailing everything after day 2 because, man, there is millions of dollars going out on the line tomorrow or today by the time you're watching this for EU, NA, NA West, all the other regions. I'm so excited to see how it closes out. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. It would mean the world to me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.